The Diocese of Norwich, Connecticut. The story of the faith in this region began under the anti-Catholic policies of early Puritan New England, grew rapidly with the arrival of Irish Catholic immigrants in the mid-19th century, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Michael R. Cote.
I tried to reemphasize to my people and to my priests that the Lord is the center of our prayer. The rest of us, we are there to adore Him.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. In the heart of New England, where the Yantic and Shetucket rivers combine to form the Thames, is the charming city of Norwich, Connecticut, sea city of the Diocese of Norwich.
The Diocese of Norwich consists of 4 counties in Connecticut and Fisher's Island in New York. It's actually only one of 3 dioceses in the country with ecclesiastical territory in more than one state. The city of Norwich itself has roots that go all the way back to the early colonial days. It's founded in 1659 by settlers from the Saybrook colony to the west. By the end of the 17th century, its strategic location on the Thames River provides a source of commerce for the town. Norwich residents play a pivotal role in the American Revolution. And throughout the 19th century, the city remains a key port town between Boston and New York.
The Catholic Church grew slowly in Connecticut because during the colonial period, only the Congregational Church was recognized, and all landowners were required to take an anti-Catholic oath, publicly denouncing the Roman Church and the Pope. And it wouldn't be until 1818 that the state of Connecticut formally recognized freedom of religion. Still, there were signs of early Catholic activity. In 1793, we have record of a Father Thayer coming to Norwich in order to preach, but there was little trace of subsequent Catholic activity in Norwich until the 1830s, when Father James Fitton came down from Massachusetts in order to administer to the Catholic population in the region, which was starting to grow with the development of mills in the area.
Catholicism in this part of New England really has a very slow start. Norwich, the particular town in Connecticut, doesn't have a single Catholic resident until 1824, when Edward Murphy takes up residence, really beginning to plant the seeds of Catholicism in the city. It takes almost 40 years for the makeup of Catholics in Norwich to really grow to a substantial size and begin to establish itself as a religious community. The first Catholic Mass in Norwich is celebrated by Father James Fitton in 1833 in an upper room loft attended by about 12 Catholics in the area. Father Fitton was a well-known, beloved priest in the New England area. In some ways, I think he embodied New England clergymen at this period in American history. He was energetic, he was encouraging of the families he served, he was very optimistic, and he was willing to preach anywhere and under any circumstances throughout this mission territory where Norwich fell into as well.
The first parish in what is now the Diocese of Norwich was St. John's in Middletown. The Catholic population had begun to grow there in the 1830s, and by 1841 they had raised enough funds in order to buy land for their own church.
Until 1953, all of Connecticut was part of the Archdiocese of Hartford. It was in 1953 that the Holy Father at the time decided to divide up the territory into 3 dioceses. For our diocese, we are the easternmost 4 counties of the state. It's one of the larger in terms of landmass in the state of Connecticut, but not as populated. The Diocese of Bridgeport is the southwesternmost and covers just the county of Fairfield, Connecticut, which is much more densely populated. So in 1953, the 2 dioceses were split from the Archdiocese. That's when the search took place to determine where the cathedral would be for the newly formed diocese.
The division was necessary because of the church's tremendous growth in the preceding decades. At the time of the establishment of those 3 dioceses, the Catholic population of the Diocese of Hartford was one of the largest in the United States, rivaling that of Chicago and Brooklyn and other major metropolitan cities. The first bishop of the diocese was Bernard Flanagan, who served for 6 years before being appointed the Bishop of Worcester, Massachusetts. During that time, he led the diocese through a period of post-World War II growth, establishing a number of parishes and schools.
Since then, the diocese has continued in many respects to grow, much like the church throughout the country. In the 1950s, 60s, and into the early 70s, expanded rapidly, both with certain immigrant populations that came into the area. And then after that, in the late 70s, both industrially, but also in terms of the practice of the faith, it kind of collapsed a bit. People moved out of the area, and so we've seen a lot of changes in our brief history. In more recent times, we've seen again a new influx of immigrants to the area in the Hispanic population, the Haitian Creole populations particularly.
Since the creation of the diocese in 1953, the mother church and cathedral of the diocese has been St. Patrick's Cathedral.
So the history of St. Patrick's Church, which later became the cathedral for the diocese when it was established, began as an outgrowth of St. Mary Parish here in Norwich. And so the legend has it that on Good Friday, around the year 1873, the men of St. Mary's Parish, who were to form the Irish, it was predominantly Irish population at the time, that would form St. Patrick Parish, marched over the hill from St. Mary's, and over the course of 3 days, between Good Friday and Easter Sunday, dug by hand the foundation of the present church. It was an immigrant population, a working class population that built this magnificent church, really with their pennies. It took a lot of people with a lot of vision and a lot of dedication to undertake such a rather ambitious plan.
The cornerstone was laid in 1873 and funded by weekly 10-cent donations from parishioners. The building is completed in 1878, allowing for its first Mass to be celebrated on St. Patrick's Day, 1879. Later on, the church is dedicated on September 28th, and the old St. Mary's Church was closed. St. Patrick has towered over Norwich untouched for many decades, and it was the fitting choice for the new diocesan cathedral.
In typical Gothic style, the interior has a real sense of being in the forest. So bundled columns that reach up and open like branches into ribs. So they sort of fan up. And there are clustered bosses on the ceiling. So we really are thinking about foliage and ultimately of the reinstatement of the garden. So it's a salvific theme. Atop the columns are angels. And actually in the corners, the corbels have figures, and culminating in the crossing with multiple groups of figures. So things really unfurl as you look at them. Great detail and great sense of procession. So as you enter, you're looking both forward, and all of these beautiful details are bringing your eye up.
A major hurricane delivered significant damage to the church building in 1938. The pastor at the time, Father Alexander Mitchell, led the efforts to return this majestic Gothic structure to its original glory, which he was successful in doing. The building underwent significant renovations again in 1950 under the direction of Monsignor John Riley, who was then the director of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. These renovations were made in order to prepare St. Patrick's for its new status as the cathedral.
After the elevation of St. Patrick's Church to St. Patrick's Cathedral, changes were made for the liturgical function of the cathedral. So unlike a parish church, a cathedral needs to be able to function for the ordinations. So enough room for the candidates for ordination to lie prostrate, with enough space to house the cathedra. And so the cathedra, the seat of the bishop, is an important element of the liturgical furnishings in any cathedral. At St. Patrick's, the cathedra is sculpted wood and highlighted in gold. And this relates to the post-historic baldacchino, which is a really prominent element at the Cathedral of St. Patrick.
Under Bishop Cote, the cathedral underwent another restoration, bringing this magnificent building back to its former glory.
There was one donor for all of this. He had no children, no family, but did very well in life. When he died, he designated his estate to the restoration of the cathedral. So we decided that we would follow the intentions of the donor and restore the cathedral. But there are all kinds of symbolisms in this cathedral. You know, if you look at the ceiling, those kind of things that protrude, called bosses, there are over 600 of them in the ceiling of this cathedral. And every one of them has a religious image, whether it's a symbol of our Blessed Mother, a symbol of the Passion of our Lord, the sacraments. During confirmations, when I have them here in the cathedral, I will often say to them, "Is this the first time you've ever been to the cathedral? Raise your hand." And of course, for many, many people, it is the first time. But then I say to them, "Do you know why this is called a cathedral?" And of course, they look at me as though I have. And I'll say, well, and I point to the chair, and I say, cathedra is a Greek word for chair. You add an AL, and there's your cathedral. That is the center of Catholic life in the Diocese of Norwich. And all of your churches are connected to that chair, not to me. I would never claim that, but to that chair. That's the center of our unity. And it represents that we are one and that we are meant to function as one.
The bishop's chair, or cathedra, in the Cathedral of St. Patrick symbolizes Bishop Cote's authority as the Apostle of Norwich. Bishop Michael R. Cote was born in Sanford, Maine on June 19, 1949. He attended Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts, and St. Mary's Seminary College in Baltimore, Maryland, where he received his BA in philosophy.
My family was rather Catholic. I began in a Catholic school, parochial school. I spent all of my 8 years there, and all of my education was Catholic. I'm very proud to be a product of Catholic education. Every year in our parochial school, we had a play, and all the classes were expected to participate. Sister Celeste was my second grade teacher, and she said to me as the year ended, "Michael, you will play the role of a priest in the school play." I thought, well, what does that mean? They had outfitted me in a little cassock and a beretta. I went out, put the beretta on the prie-dieu, and gave my blessing, no words, just a blessing, put my beretta on and walked off. And I think Sister Celeste sowed a seed. But I went to college as a language major. But I think what happened is that little bug in my ear kept saying, yes, 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 you want to be a teacher, but you're not going to teach languages and you're not going to teach math. You're going to teach about me. And it clicked. And here I am.
Father Cote was ordained a priest by Pope Paul VI at St. Peter's Basilica on June 29, 1975.
I was ordained and was asked to go to the Catholic University of America to study church law, canon law. I did enjoy my years in Washington studying law. I did it, and I'm glad I did it. It was a nice addition to my life. Well, I ended up in the Diocesan Tribunal, which deals basically with failed marriages and how to try to reconcile people back to church and the ability to receive the sacraments of the church. When we talk about law, we think of it as kind of strict and harsh, but what I learned about church law is that really it is a pastoral tool. It's meant to bring reconciliation to people who feel they've been harmed, whether they've been harmed perceptibly by a bishop, whether their pastor has harmed them, they think, whether they've been harmed by a fellow parishioner. Church law exists to bring some peace to those difficult situations. And so I think I began to appreciate law in that it was a tool for peace and not punishment.
In 1989, Cote was appointed as secretary at the Apostolic Nunciature, the Vatican's embassy to the United States in Washington, D.C. He returned to the diocesan ministry in 1994 as pastor of Sacred Heart Church in Auburn until in 1995 he was named an auxiliary bishop of Portland, Maine.
When I actually found out, I was a parish priest in Maine, and Sunday morning I was getting ready for church and Mass, and my bishop called me, and he said, can I stop by? Of course, Bishop, you can. And he's the one that came, and he said to me, early this morning, I got a call from the Holy Father's ambassador to this country, and he's asking if you, me, would be my auxiliary bishop. So I got on the phone and I said, I've never said no to the church. Why should I start now? The lesson that I learned from my ordinary was to be consultative. He said, don't think you know everything, and don't presume that you know what everyone's mind is. Question it, talk about it. But I think that lesson to talk and to hear has served me well, because I don't feel I have to be alone in my decision making. I have a lot of talented people that work with me, or I work with them. It's proved to be a very, very effective tool.
Following his appointment by Pope John Paul II, Bishop Cote was installed as Bishop of Norwich, Connecticut on May 14, 2003.
I found out through my bishop. He called me in, and the nuncio had done exactly what he had done when he wanted me to be an auxiliary. And he called me in and said, what do you think about going to Norwich? You said you would never say no. Don't say no. So here I am. This diocese, I've been very blessed. My priests are very good.
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Cote has aspired to live out his apostolic mission faithfully, to govern, to teach, and to sanctify his people.
People that are in the pew today are not there because they fear not being there. They're there because they want to worship God. And they're showing it. They love the Lord and they want to worship the Lord, and they're being very faithful to His church. It's a wonderful thing. It's a great gift. And Augustine said, as you know, my heart is restless until I rest in you, O Lord. And I really do believe that's the heart of every human being. Now, we can be in all kinds of different places, in all kinds of different experiences. In the end, our hearts are restless until they rest in the Lord. And I think if the church, priests, liturgy, sacraments can help people to find peace in the Lord, then we've done our job.